Hi, everybody. How are you? Did you survive the weekend? I know I did. Welcome to Moohead Radio. I'm your host, the big and furry bovine. For the next however long I fucking feel like it, I'll be talking about Northeast Ohio sports. I do have a conclusion that I've come to, and the Brown season may be less than halfway over. But for me, I'm not going to be dedicating everything on the show to the Cleveland Browns like I have during previous football seasons. And we'll explain on the show today why. And let me at least address it up front by saying there are two teams in the market that are winning, the Guardians and the Cavaliers. Now, you may not like the fact that the Cavaliers can't compete with the highest tier teams who get solid free agent players year in, year out. That may bother you. You may have differences of opinion as far as what players can help the Cleveland Cavaliers and which ones have not helped the Cleveland Cavaliers, Jared Allen, in playoff time. You can, you can do that. I'm going to bring Christopher Milton in. Hi, Christopher. How you doing?
Hi, Moo. When you get finished, I have three things to say to you.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
No, they're real good.
Okay. So as far as the Cavs are concerned, they get to the playoffs. They have some legitimate good players, and they have a great player in Donovan Mitchell, and it's exciting and fun to watch. All right. Even though it may be eventually disappointing because they didn't get Karl Anthony Towns in the offseason, or that, any one of a number of things that the Cavaliers fans were hoping would happen. Nothing did. They're standing pat with what they had, and they brought in a new head coach. At least we all agree that Bickerstaff couldn't continue to be the head coach for the Cavaliers because he just ran the team basically emotionally into the ground. Second of all, there's the Guardians who play tonight, who are playing against the New York Yankees, and they have, according to anybody who writes so much as a sentence on the internet, have no chance. We'll talk about what the Guardians have, what the Guardians don't have, but I will say that they've earned your respect. And if you don't respect them, then you just don't respect overachievement. And if you don't recognize overachievement, you certainly are sitting on your fat asses waiting for the next Deshaun Watson or whoever it is, name player, to bail you out. Nobody knew who Myles Garrett was, basically, until he proved himself for the Cleveland Browns. People, were thrilled when Bernie Kosar came to Cleveland, but not so thrilled when Johnny Manziel came to Cleveland. Although in the beginning, people were like, "Oh, we got a popular player." Ooh. Well, no. So again, if you can't recognize overachievement, you can't recognize underachievement either. So I got no time to argue with people who just take a look at a team's final standing and say, well, that was a wasted season. I haven't won a championship in my lifetime. And it's like, nobody cares about your fucking lifetime. The planet is going to continue spinning long after you're gone and long after I'm gone. Nobody cares about the window of your meaningless existence when you're like 35 years old. I got people who are 35 years old saying, Moo, in my life, it's like, your life? What do you know about life? Life hasn't even hit you yet. You know what happened to me after I was 35? My goodness. When I was 35 years old, it was 1992. That's what it was when I was, no. Is that right? That sure sounds like it's right. I was sitting at a radio station in Flint, Michigan, wondering how in the hell I bought this goddamn thing when there was virtually no money on the books. Like, I mean, when I was 35 years old, I was married to another woman who I would end up being married to for 37 years. And didn't end up that way. Wasn't by my hand. But nonetheless, lots of stuff happens after you're 35. And you know something? I was one of those guys who was like, well, the Browns haven't won since 1964. Cavaliers have never won a championship. And lo and behold, do you know when they won a championship? When I was flat on my back and I watched the final game 7 in South Carolina. I was living outside of Landrum, South Carolina, and I was bedridden because I'd had a bicycle accident and it ripped out my knee and I was going to have knee replacement surgery. And that's how I remember it all. It's kind of like, wow. I was laying there and it was like, I'm watching the game and I couldn't even jump to my feet when Kyrie hit that 3. But when I thought, no, there's no way the Cavaliers. I mean, I watched, the Mark Price days and, and the days of Ted Stepien, God only knows. And then the expansion years, and it was like, there's just no way. But it did happen. So if you're 35 years old, hang in there. Quit being such little bitches. I mean, this will either resolve itself some way or it will not. All right. And then there's the Cleveland Browns. All right. And before I get into this, I promised I would let Christopher say a few things. Christopher, the floor is yours.
Okay, Moo.
Yeah.
So as long as I've lived, which I'm not complaining because I told you how old I was.
Yes.
I never thought I would see any championships for Cleveland at all, right?
That's right.
But guess what? Then the Cavs happened. And in the same year, the Indians went to game 7 in overtime, right?
Makes you kind of hungry, don't it?
So I know I'm never going to see the Browns do it, not while I'm here. But I want everybody to know that these kids on the Guardians, I hope they play free and don't have to weigh to Cleveland on their backs.
Right.
Because you used to work in radio. There was a guy, he sung a song. He said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I thought it was Meatloaf. I'm not sure.
It is Meatloaf.
But I'll take the 2 out of 3. That is never bad. Because, Major League Baseball do not want to see the Indians in the World Series. But everybody outside of New York and LA is probably pulling for the Indians. I mean, the Guardians.
Who cares? They are contiguously. If people want to call them the Indians, call them the Indians. I know there's an argument that goes.
Old school, move. I'm old school, so they'll always be that to me. They'll always be that to me.
Yeah.
So
Chief
what I was trying to say is these kids that are playing, because we're generally the farm team for all these people that can pay a lot of money. I hope these kids do well.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they make some noise. And I hope they upset Fox and Major League Baseball and win it all. Because 2 out of 3 truly ain't bad.
I'll tell you, 1 out of 3 ain't bad. When you got nothing for so long, it's like, and when it came up that, well, you got your game 7 opportunity, Cavaliers, but it's in Golden State against that team, and it's like you knew all the whistles are going to blow the other way. And you know something? People in Cleveland, a lot of them don't like LeBron James. And it's remarkable. All he did was fund the city of Akron and helped rebuild part of the community. All he did was bring a championship to Cleveland. And you know something? He is self-immersed and he's opinionated. He's not afraid to speak up on things. But I was always taught you can talk when you deliver. Right. And they said Muhammad Ali, when he was Cassius Clay, they said, oh, this loudmouth is going to get knocked from here until tomorrow and next year into the next millennium by Sonny Liston. This big mouth guy. Now, and he was calling him a big ugly bear and he was shooting his mouth off. And he was, in fact, the greatest heavyweight who ever lived. Now, did he realize that at the time, or was he just young, 21 years old, full of vim and vigor? Was he just a different breed? And the reality was, once he became champion, people got upset because A, he was tied in with the black Muslims, and that bothered people. And it wasn't so much that he was young and he got sucked in, and Elijah Muhammad and that crazy nonsense. And when Ali found out what it all stood for, he became a devout Muslim, not a black Muslim. He became a devout Muslim, and that probably pissed people off. And it pissed people off when he said he was going to beat the big ugly bear. And it pissed people off when he came back because he didn't go to the war because he was a conscientious objector and it was an immoral war. And looking back at the people that I personally know who fought in the jungles in Nam, to them, it wasn't an important fight either. This was, I don't know what in the hell we were doing there, and they don't know either. And there are some people who, my country right or wrong, they will support the country, but the fact is nothing was accomplished except loss of life in a war that was a fight over virtually nothing. So he was a conscientious objector. Joe Frazier beats him, and a bunch of people say, we told you so. But you know, the great ones have a way of rising from the dead. And I can tell you about boxing because they always got one more left in them. And you never know when that one is going to show up. And it's remarkable when, you know, they said that Joe Louis had lost his first fight to Jersey Joe Walcott. Everybody scored it for Walcott, but Louis was a national hero. And so they gave it to Louis. So he fought him again. And when he fought him again, Walcott was confusing him again, but a shell of the Brown Bomber caught him on the ropes, knocked him out with a combination of punches, and he got his revenge. And after that, he couldn't fight anymore. He tried, and he just got, you know, he was done. He was just finished. Ali, for his part, went on to come back from the defeat against Frazier to beat the man twice, including the Thrilla in Manila. And he wasn't done yet. I mean, people forget, you know, it's like he beat Sonny Liston a second time in the form of George Foreman. And you say to yourself, well, George Foreman, but hey, George Foreman became a champion 20 years later. Great fighters, and George Foreman, way underrated. It wasn't that he had brilliant form, he had remarkable power, and he became smarter as he got older. They always have one more in him. And LeBron James in Game 7 had one more in him. The Cavaliers as a team kept it close until the end, and the referees swallowed their whistles. And in a fair game of the final 4.5 minutes, in which it seemed nobody scored in that game out of sheer fatigue, out of a fair 4.5 minutes came a fair outcome, and a great outcome for the city of Cleveland and all of Northeast Ohio. So now the Guardians are on the precipice of being the underdog team against an overwhelming odd. And we'll see what happens. Now, that was the first thing you wanted to say. What was next you wanted to say, Christopher? Anything?
Well, I was just saying, because the Guardians are kids, except for maybe Ramirez, because he was here with Lindor in 16. So maybe they don't have the weight that, say, a LeBron would have. And maybe they can just play free. Because after all, that right porch is short in New York.
Yep.
All they gotta do is get it up in the air.
Well,
So I'm hoping they just play free. I don't care what New York says, Major League Baseball. I want them to spoil the party.
All right. Before we
And
get into,
you know what else I didn't know? I didn't know it was 2-3-2. That's great. All we need is one up there.
well, I mean, that's, you never know. Yeah, the Yankees did not have a great home record, but their record against the Guardians/Indians in the past, when they play in Yankee Stadium, the Indians/Guardians don't do so well. So a lot of it's the bright lights and all the pressure that's heaped upon you, and that short fence in right field, and the crowd and the aura of the big market team, and everybody wanting the big market team to win. That's
But they only have 2 hitters over there. That's Stanton and Judge. That's it. That's all they got.
Well, we're going to find out. I want to talk a little bit about the Browns because people come here to listen to this, and basically, the Kevin Stefanski press conference was 30 minutes late, and people were, suspecting maybe something's going on. Nothing was going on at all. It was really foolishness. They put Deontay Foreman up there to talk to the press. The press had no questions for him, basically. And then they put Mahmoud Diabate up there, and they had no questions for him either. And then Stefanski comes out and says, I think Deshaun gives us the best chance to win, continues to give us the best chance to win. We need to play really good offensive football at his position and really at every position to be successful. Then this. When asked if co-owner Jimmy Haslam is forcing him to stick with Watson, Stefanski said the following: I don't get caught up in narratives, but we have a good dialogue with myself, Andrew Berry, ownership, about all things that have to do with this team. They've been nothing but supportive, and any decision when it comes to football is my decision. Now, you know what's remarkable to me? How he enunciated all that with Haslam's dick in his mouth. Sorry, I don't mean to be too rude, but I do actually mean to be too rude. The fact of the matter is, there is this narrative concept. There is no narrative. There is no narrative. And the reason I've left Radu's comment up for as long as I, have, is because he is the guy who said that it was a homeless person that led him to take Johnny Manziel in the draft. That was back in 2014, and he was walking down the street, and a homeless guy goes, draft Johnny Manziel. Guy was probably a wino who was out of luck in life, and that was his opinion. And at that moment, Jimmy Haslam said, I had to get me some Johnny Manziel. Now, this is not a narrative. This is a fact, okay? Now, of course, he was probably already leaning toward that, and what he was doing is something that a rich person who has no feel for regular people would do. It's like, it isn't just me. I'm doing this for the fans of Cleveland, including the homeless fans of Cleveland, to get Johnny Manziel. How's that for a freaking narrative? This guy's a nut job. And he's accomplished nothing in Cleveland whatsoever except the 2 back-to-back worst seasons in the history of the franchise. This is all this man has done. And the reason everybody's so confused about Baker Mayfield and whether he's doing well, and again, he plays half a football game. Yes, he had a good game, but he threw 3 interceptions that led to, what was it? It was something crazy about like 27 points for the opposition. I mean, if it were any other circumstance playing any other team, he'd have probably lost that game. But the bottom line is this. The reason people support Baker Mayfield is because he still managed to win despite the fact that he was playing for the idiot Haslam. All right. So the narratives, people can guess what's going on. But if you really believe that Deshaun Watson gives this team the best chance to win, then you are acknowledging, as the coaches, that the team can't win. He went on in his press conference to say the normal, we got to be betters a couple times, and it's all about all the other players. But all the other players are equal in their responsibilities of losing, not just Deshaun Watson. It's an entire roster of losers, of people who just can't catch passes, can't get open. They don't learn their assignments. They jump off sides. They line up on the wrong side of the field. It's like the Keystone Cops, man. It is like watching the Three Stooges playing NFL football. So how's that for a narrative? I just look at what's actually happening, and that's the whole deal. And as long, and if you don't believe me, ask Sal Palantonio. He's the guy who reported the story about the homeless guy and Jimmy Haslam. All right. This was a published story. It was not something that was denied. It was not something where Jimmy Haslam came out and said, no homeless guy ever said that. This was the fresh Jimmy Haslam coming to Cleveland. He wanted to be Mr. Humanity. And when he's not, he's a cold motherfucking prick is what he is, and he wants your money. And he wants your money now to build a dome. And you know why he wants the dome? Not to win Super Bowls, so that he will be associated with it. And he'll be looked as a civic great. You know who else was like that? Art Modell. Art Modell honestly believed that, I'm just an anchor to the civic mindedness of this part of the country. And he just talked bullshit. And you know something? When confronted with, Northeast Ohio, because I'm such a giving person, or Baltimore, you saw what he did. And Jimmy Haslam will do the same thing. He'll desert Northeast Ohio, just like Republic Steel did.
Yeah. The Browns, for real, they should trade Miles, they should trade JOK, and they should trade Njoku, because I want them to have a shot to win something. They're never going to win.
Or just to win sometime, because right now, man, it's far away.
Yeah, they're just wasting their youth.
And you know something, Jim? I'm not going to say that Stefanski is the problem. He's part of a problem. If you remember when you were a kid, you used erector sets, to build little toys. If you're not old enough to know that, there are other things that you've done, I'm sure, where you built something, and you've got to have the right parts and the right pieces in the right place. And the organization hasn't done their job. The front office hasn't done their job. So I'm not going to say it's all on Kevin Stefanski. But when you keep calling 3rd and 1 jet sweeps and the other team knows what's coming and you know what's happening before he does it, it's just like Schwartz and his damn blitzing. How in the hell? I don't know if you saw the Cincinnati Bengals game and how the Bengals scored their first touchdown. They loaded all their receivers on the left side of the field. Burrow goes back to pass. There's only one guy on the right side of the field, the other team. He just scrambles and runs 47 yards with it. Now, that can't happen. You can't tell me that the defense was designed that way. And it's the same thing in Cleveland. When you see a ball get thrown to the outside and the guy goes untouched into the end zone because there's nobody out there, you got Newsome, who wouldn't fight through a pick, or even because you're not going to get a pick called if you don't try to slam through it, for gosh sakes. So, he was lollygagging on the play, but everything was coming in on a blitz. And even Jalen Hurts, who was being booed by his own fans. I mean, this team was ripe for the picking. The fans hate that team because they're underachieving, the Eagles. And the fans are not shy in Philadelphia. If Rocky Balboa had lost 2 fights in a row, they wouldn't claim him. There'd be no statue of Rocky Balboa. They'd see him and go, boo! That's what they do. And sure enough, they were booing. But it didn't matter because we ran the predictable defense. They saw it. He just threw a quick out and walked away, and they get a big touchdown. And it happens every damn game. People say, why is the defense giving up big plays? You know, that's not Kevin Stefanski. That's Jim Schwartz. The fact is, it's all messed up.
But Moo, on that play, guess who wasn't in the game?
Who dat?
Denzel Ward was on the sideline. That's the one they paid money to. He should have been there then.
Well, I mean, he was, a lot of times these guys are like, they're not hurt. They're just gassed. They're not in proper physical condition. I mean, this is the second time I've seen a Cleveland Brown, because we know that what it was last time when the receiver just said, you know, I stopped running because, you know, I was kind of winded. And that's what Denzel's out there, and he's winded. And what they were doing, you know, in training camp, I have no idea. But that is, you see, on Kevin Stefanski. That is on him. And the bad calls are on him. And his refusal to put his foot down and stand up to the players, and motivate the players, because they're obviously not motivated, that's all on Kevin Stefanski, because that's his job. And when the job doesn't get done, you got to point to the people. I have no problems pointing to Jimmy Haslam, but I have no problem also pointing at Kevin Stefanski. And if he gets a job in 3 days somewhere else, Jim, that's great. Let him have a great career. But, you know, it's an uphill struggle in Cleveland to begin with. If you don't understand that everybody talks badly about this part of the country, if you don't understand that and how that makes the job much harder to begin with, you know, if you're not up to it, you got to, there is somebody out there who get the job done. I mean, Tyronn Lue stepped in for David Blatt and got the job done. David Blatt had lost the Cavaliers team midseason. His slandering with women and his egotistical nature and his talking down to players and just, he was his own fluffer. This guy would talk himself up like he had really accomplished something in European basketball, right? He was a bag of wind, and the players stopped listening to him. Ty Lue cared. In fact, Ty Lue cared so much that dealing with Dan Gilbert's constant meddling and constant late night phone calls, all of that stuff, he got sick. He had to stop. But he was up to the task to get that team ready to play that Game 7 and to have the kind of season that they had. So you give him all the credit in the world. Results. That's what everything's about at the end of the day. Everybody fails now and then, but at the end of the day, it's all about the final result.
So you know what irritated me the most? The Browns were on the 3-yard line, Moo. False start, sack. I was like, oh my God. So.
Yeah, just nonsense. And I love people who take these statistics, you know. The Cavs were 31-10 when they let Blatt go. And wasn't it the smartest thing they ever did? He would never have led the team to a championship. Never would have happened. Because afterwards, you found out what the problems were with David Blatt. And if he was such a great coach, wouldn't somebody have picked him up? Why did he end up back in Europe? Why do you think that was? And the answer is nobody could deal with him because he had an ego the size of the Empire State Building. And for no reason, he hadn't accomplished anything. And yes, he was an Ivy Leaguer. I'm just saying. He was very full of himself, that man. So, you know, sometimes it's not the record. Sometimes it's the result. You can be a wild card team and win a Super Bowl. It has happened. You got to get there. And if you don't get there, you're not talking about anything.
Yeah,
Now,
you get to the party, you got a chance.
and let me, again, somebody's asking a question. How many damn penalties the Browns have? It's a lot, folks. The Browns committed 7 penalties, all on the offensive side of the ball. 4 were called against the offensive line, 3 of which were false starts, but at the worst possible time, which means you could see them. I mean, you're wondering how to make orange juice. You just put the orange up the asshole of the offensive line of the Browns when they're in the red zone in the shadow of the goal line to score 7 points, and their asses will get so tight it'll squeeze you plenty of orange juice. That's what I can tell you about the Cleveland Browns, because a lot of these penalties consistently happen at the most critical moments of games, and that means they're not mentally prepared. And you're never going to win. With elite athletes, you're never going to win if you're not prepared. There are other things that were interesting about this loss. I mean, they only gave up 2.6 yards a carry to Saquon Barkley. I thought he was going to rip us one. It didn't happen. You know? The Browns only had 1 sack, but you know something? They were holding the other team until the one time Jim Schwartz decides to do an all-out blitz, and it's like they just waited for him. He couldn't go through the whole game without that nonsense. He couldn't do it. And they waited, and they waited, and they waited, and they had the big play when they needed it. The other big play that they had, I don't know what, McLeod is getting all this praise because he picked up a ball that was rolling on the ground. For the God's sakes, it was Myles Garrett who made the play. McLeod happened to be in the neighborhood, and he picked the ball up, and there was nobody in front of him. Whoop-de-doo. But when he had an opportunity to cover A.J. Brown in the beginning of the game, he just peed his pants, and he stood in one spot, and he didn't commit to anywhere in the field. Just watch the play. Not mentally prepared. Watson was sacked 5 more times. These are all just statistical things. 5.1 yards per passing attempt. And that's probably intentional because no matter what Stefanski says in the pressers, he's not confident about Deshaun Watson's ability to throw the ball down the field or the receiver's ability to get down the field. They also asked Amari Cooper about the face mask that cost us, toward the end of the game. And he said, yeah, I did grab his face mask, but it was a DPI. He said it was a DPI before I did that. And I was, it's like I said, he was wrestling to try to get his arm inside of him. The guy was grabbing him. But of course, you have to understand again, if there's a flag to be thrown, it's going to go against Cleveland. It's always been that way, and it'll always be that way. And that's why your players have to be mentally acute, and they have to be ready to play, because they're not going to get any gifts from anyone. And the one championship that LeBron won with the Cavaliers was a fair final game. It was actually a fairly officiated Game 7 on the road, and it was because of the star power of LeBron James. That's why. And there was no other reason. LeBron James isn't on that team. We're not there. And the publicity that went with him, it wouldn't be there. So you can talk your garbage about LeBron all you want. All he does is win. And all he does, and you might want to protect Michael Jordan, all you want to protect him. But the reality is LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of our generation. Now, there will be somebody else, because there always is. I've been waiting for the greatest fighter since Muhammad Ali, and it never happened. And I think UFC is part of the reason for that. I think that, boxing is just not as popular as it used to be. I think UFC stuff is probably more popular than boxing. So we have fewer athletes going into that realm. I mean, the fact that guys can just walk into heavyweight fights, that Zhang, the Chinaman's 41 years old and he's fighting for titles, for gosh sakes. That Deontay Wilder could become professional when he was like 30 years old. I mean, and now he's just a shell and he gets knocked out in every fight, you know. And Ron Shane is asking me a question. Is it true the Browns scored more on defense than on offense? All I know is that that there is that McLeod is tied for the lead in touchdowns by Browns players this year because of the two returns that he made off of turnovers.
So let me ask you this question. So because we don't really have a superstar except for Jose, right?
Right.
We're not going to get any calls in New York.
Wait till you see the home plate umpires. Wait till you see this. You're going to see a widened strike zone for Yankee pitchers. We see it all the time. Fuck, we were seeing that against the Tigers. Are you kidding me? There was that one home plate umpire who was calling balls that were literally, you know, this far off the plate, man. And
we need the umpire from Game 5. He was fair all the way across.
At least consistency is all you can ask for. But that same guy who was the home plate umpire, when he was the third base umpire, was saying our guys were not checking their swings. And you would see replay after replay, they checked their swing. And you could see the look of antagonism and misery in Stephen Vogt's eyes because welcome to Cleveland. You're just going to get a bevy of bad calls.
But did you see the call with New York and Kansas City where they threw him out at second and they called him safe?
Yep.
He was out.
He was out, and they had all the time in the world to look at it. And it didn't matter how many angles it showed it. They were just not going to give in. And
so that means it's going to be Cleveland against the world and the refs again, right?
You got it. And that's the way I like it. I'm a belligerent cow. So that's the way I like it.
Me too.
And Tori, I don't know what you're smoking. We should hire Deion Sanders. Why don't you go back and get Johnny Manziel again? Why don't you ask a homeless guy if we should get Deion Sanders as a head coach? Deion Sanders is 4-2 at Colorado, and he's got a very talented son, Shedeur, and he's got another guy who is their wide receiver, who also technically had played quarterback in his past, who is the anticipated number 1 pick in the draft. And they're saying that Shedeur is the number 4 projected pick. And I'm not going to talk about Shedeur. I'm only going to talk about Deion. And Deion is somebody I don't want to see as a head coach in Cleveland, Ohio. It's just foolishness. That's just, it's almost as foolish as a guy who made millions of dollars saying, "You're fired," becoming the president of the United States. It's the same kind of mentality that we have, that what we see on television and the loudest mouth people, it's like, how does Snoop Dogg keep getting jobs? I can't understand it. So help me God. I wish he'd just fashizzle away. It's like, enough.
And so Lou, when I buy the Cleveland Browns, right? Would you be player personnel director?
If what?
When I buy the Cleveland Browns, will you be player personnel director?
No, but I'll tell you what I would be, because I don't have the ability. I wouldn't know what to look for talent-wise. I mean, you're looking at an experienced person who would be able to take a look at reels and reels and reels of college athletes and find the diamonds in the rough. I mean, anyone could pick out a great player, but it's the picks that are the second and third and fourth round picks, or even the fifth round picks, that blossom and become good players. That's the kind of intelligence and experience you need to have. What I could do is get people motivated to do the work that they love to do. And I'm a person who brings people together from a professional perspective. Right now, the team is not together. And it hurts me to watch it, because these guys are putting their lives on the line, shortening their lives statistically to play this game and to be wasting valuable years of their lives, and they're not on the same page. That's really difficult, you know? It's really difficult. I wanted to finish up with more Guardians talk. The Guardians, Angel Martinez is been sent back down. Basically, he's off of the playoff roster so that we could get one more pitcher on there, and that's Avila. Pedro Avila is a guy who's kind of a mid-inning eater, and a guy who, quite honestly, and I'm going to be real honest about this too, if you see him throwing multiple innings, we're so far behind. We have no chance of coming back and winning. He's not a primary receiver. And obviously Martinez is not needed because Rocchio's been hitting. So, there's a bunch of things going on here. And Lane Thomas has been hitting. And Angel was playing infield positions, and there's no room in the infield for him at this point. And with Lane coming on strong, there's no room in the outfield. We're the chosen platoon of Brennan and Big Christmas in right field. That gives you a guy who's a line drive hitter and a left-handed hitter, and a right-handed guy, if he ever makes contact, who could hit the ball out to any field, which unfortunately hasn't been happening for Big Christmas recently. But, Christmas is just around the corner. What can I tell you? So that's the first thing. The next thing is, you want to know what the starting lineups are for the team. Well, this is who Stephen Vogt's going with. Kwan will be leading off, Fry second, Ramirez third, Lane Thomas in the fourth spot. Josh Naylor, who I'm concerned about at first base, is fifth. Noel is in right field batting sixth. Then Bo Naylor, who I'm also concerned with. I'm at the point where maybe you want a more defensive catcher because he's not hitting the ball either. Then Andre Jimenez, who has disappeared and has a history of disappearing against the New York Yankees. He's in the 8 hole. Brian Rocchio is in the 9 hole. So you've got that. That is your starting lineup. And, of course, you've got Matthew Boyd, who's going to be Cobb. My bad. Alex Cobb. I knew it was one of the two guys that we got who had arm trouble. But Cobb's going to be starting against Carlos Rodon. But again, it's going to be an interesting game. There's more statistically. Go ahead.
Who is the other catcher besides Naylor? Because I like him a lot.
Austin
too.
Hedges.
Yes. Stop it.
Donkey.
He's not hitting either, right?
He never does, but he's a better defensive catcher. So, I'm getting to a point where if Naylor isn't hitting the ball and somebody has a better way with veteran pitchers, we have veteran pitchers now. We've got Boyd, we've got Cobb, and he's going to get time out there. I'm not. He can't hit. He hits like a pitcher used to hit. But right now Naylor's not hitting either. The Guardians this year had an overall 238 batting average, which was 9th in the league. They scored 708 runs. That's 7th. They had 185 home runs, tied for 6th. That's better production than what anyone would have thought that they would have gotten from a power perspective. The ERA at 3.61. The problem here, the starting rotation of Guardians pitchers, only 50 and 57 with a 4.40 earned run average, and that's not good enough. The bullpen is 42 and 12 with a 2.57, first of the league. All right. The pitching was 12th, so not so good. The Yankees, and this is what it's all about, a 248 average, which is 4th in the league. 815 runs, first. Homers, 237, first. ERA 2.50, second. Starting rotation 65 and 48 with a 3.85. That's eighth. The bullpen 29 and 20 with a 3.62 and 45 saves. That's fourth.
But move. So yeah, they led in home runs, but they play 81 games with that short porch.
I look, and they're going to be playing more of them in this series. I mean, the way, I mean, I look at the stats and I look at the players. Josh Naylor had a great overall statistical season, but he's a 191 hitter against the Yankees this year. All right. And he's gained a tremendous amount of weight. He does not look like a person who's serious about keeping themselves in condition. So he's worn down.
He looks like Bubby Brister to me. Remember that guy?
Yeah. I mean, he's doughboy.
It looks like he's drinking beer every night or something.
And he may well be. He may be living at Pizza Hut delivery. I got no idea. But the bottom line is you can see his statistics dropping off the map the longer the season goes because he's not in proper condition and he's flailing at home plate. He's back to his helmet falling off. You know, he started hitting better when he was just staying within himself and choosing to go to the opposite field. Why he won't continue to do that, you know, he won't take a walk. He'll be up 2-1 in a count. Guy will throw the ball damn near a foot off the plate down into the dirt, and he'll swing at it as hard as he can, and his helmet falls off. I don't know what's going on there, but we need more from him. All right. As far as and they're going position by position, you know, but I don't look at a baseball game that way. But Jimenez, you know, had a nice enough year, not a great offensive year, not a terrible offensive year, great defensive year, best defensive second baseman in the league. However, he's a 174 career playoff hitter in 12 games, right? And that's somebody's got to stand up. Brian Rocchio, I was amazed how in the important games against the Tigers, how he gave us not only the great leaping catch at shortstop and steady shortstop play, but was hitting the ball on a line, and he wasn't over swinging. He was just making contact and hitting the ball, you know, line drives and ground balls through the infield. So I think that's great. Jose needs to be Jose batting from the left with that short porch out there. That's going to be very important for us, and it puts a lot of pressure on him. Bo Naylor was hitless in the ALDS against Detroit. You know, he had 2 hits and an RBI in 10 at bats against New York. That's a 200 average, folks. You know, he is a lifetime 192 hitter against the Yankees. And you can see that it's a matter of, will people rise to the occasion? That's what it comes down to. And I'm not saying that the Yankees are unbeatable, because the Yankees haven't won a World Series since, what, 2009? I mean, it's been a while for all the hype that they get and all the Aaron Judge talk and the Giancarlo Stanton talk. It's been a long time since they've won, and they've disappointed the people in the Bronx for many years now. This is not a given. This is not like an obvious thing. They're going to get help, believe me, and not from their players. They're going to be getting help from Major League Baseball. You know, the fact that Lane Thomas is coming around, that's really good news for us. But, you know, left-handed hitters are important as hell in Yankee Stadium. Not so much in Cleveland Stadium. In Yankee Stadium, you got to be able, or you got to have patient right-handed hitters with enough power to take the ball out opposite field. That's what you need. Jhonkensy Noel is trying to pull everything. He's not letting the ball get deep into the strike zone and using his natural power and strength. He's a guy who could just hit an opposite field fly ball and it would go out of Yankee Stadium. But he has to make the move to cut down on the big long swing and to be more selective at what he's swinging at. And he's just only 22 years old. So
they got to be patient.
Yeah, and that's something they haven't been good about. And I was really surprised that in Game 5, when things mattered the most, they really looked like they were more settled down. The other thing I believe the left-handed hitters are important, but I believe that the Guardians have to be the Guardians. They have to dance with who brung them. And that means they got to be stealing bases and putting pressure on. They got to sacrifice runners. If you have a man on first base, you got to try to get him on second because the Yankees are going to score runs. We know that. No matter how good of our pitching is, they're going to score runs. You got to get that man from first to second. I don't care if you bunt him there or if you steal him there. You got to do that. You got to take extra bases. You got to swipe second and third base while you can. And a pivotal play of David Fry bunting a runner in from third base was classic Guardians ball. And, a safety squeeze perfectly executed with Rocchio getting his hand underneath the tag, safe at home plate. It's going to take that kind of hustle. And you want to try to be like a swarm of gnats to defeat this giant. And if they start getting the feel that you're putting pressure on them, they might start messing up. That's the chance that the Guardians have.
Wait, Moo, do you remember the Indians were playing the Yankees and they in the New York paper they called him Knob Blockhead because he was holding the ball and the Indians were still running around the bases. He was arguing with the ref.
Who is
New York? His name. The paper named him Knob Blockhead.
Oh, no block. Yeah, the guy who had the throwing problems from second base to the first.
Yeah, but he was arguing with the official, and the Indians were still running.
Yeah, and that's how you know somebody's lost their cool. And you got to pressure them because, again, it's like what I said about the Browns being in Philadelphia. The fans were ready to boo them off the field. They're kicking a field goal, and the next thing you know, the Browns are running the football in, and the fans started to boo. The fans in New York are the same damn way. They will boo. They will show their dissatisfaction. They're overcrowded in this small space, and they're unhappy people. And if you make their team look foolish, in their eyes, you're making them look foolish, and they don't want to look foolish because they're from New York, for God's sakes. And that means they're going to boo at their own players. That's where you want them mentally. And it's not easy to get them there because everybody's excited to begin with, but not if they start messing up. And it is entirely possible.
Well, the Guardians, they have nothing to lose.
No.
That's why I want them to play free.
With that said, Cleveland.com predicts the Yankees in 6. I think everybody would. I don't think that I think the Yankees are very likely to win this series, but it's the fact that we're here. I'm the only one who owns what I say. And when I said they were going to go 70-92 this year, I just had it the wrong way around. I was completely wrong. I just didn't see this coming. And, people who said, this is the Browns Super Bowl year, none of them come out and say they change their tune and they scrub out everything that they said before. I'm not doing this for a living, man. And I'm not a prognosticator. I mean, I'm right sometimes and I'm wrong sometimes. And boy, was I wrong about these guys.
Well, I was wrong. I was way wronger than you. I thought they'd lose 100 games.
I mean, well, you just had the wrong team in the division. That's all.
No, I thought the Indians the Guardians would lose 100 games because I was like, okay, Francona is gone. we're not going to win anything. And they absolutely surprised me.
But you want to know something? And it's what bothers me about the Browns so much. What bothers me about Kevin Stefanski, what bothers me about the front office and the ownership of the team. When you see them on the field, they don't believe. And when the going gets tough, they fall apart. And every week, same thing every week. But look at the Guardians. Let me finish the thought. The Guardians get into game 5 with the Tigers. Well, first there was game 4, and they were facing elimination, and they found a way to win on foreign soil. That was the first thing. But then to come back and was like, oh, they're going to let their home fans down. You know, it's just like game 7 of the World Series, and Charlie Nagy's coming in for the bull, in the ill-fated inning, and Jose Mesa, look at him, he's coming out in the 9th inning, we're going to win a World Series, and then bam, we're going to let our home fans down. This team didn't do it. This team has character, and I'll give this to Stephen Vogt. He may not make every right decision because he's not an experienced coach, but he must have the backs of his players because they kept their heads together in a situation where it would have been easy to just cave in. They did not do it.
Well, see the difference between those and the Guardians believe. The Browns, when they give up points, they don't believe. The defense doesn't believe they can score to win.
Yeah. Belief is the first thing.
Right.
All you can give is top effort. And I don't mean physical only, but mental concentration and acuity. That is what you got to come in thinking that this is what we have to do in order to win. And every boxer, whoever pulled an upset in a ring, came in with the belief that they had a chance. There are other guys like Bruno from Great Britain who walked into the ring against Mike Tyson, and it was like somebody was dragging his ass into the ring. He didn't want to go in there, and he went to sleep very early in that fight. And you can tell when a fighter is ready to roll or when they're just out of it. It was like when George Foreman fought really against whenever they needed a big time knockout. It was Kenny Norton who was weak-minded. Kenny Norton had Muhammad Ali's number for some reason and gave him hell. But when he fought big punchers like Ernie Shavers, knocked out Kenny Norton, like in the first round, banged him out. And George Foreman did the same thing to him. He just never showed up. He couldn't handle big punchers. And it came out later, before his tragic death, that he had hired psychologists because he had a problem with that. And if you're wondering, yet when he fought Larry Holmes, he just tooth and nail for 15 rounds, and that was a war. But it was the big punch that it messed his head up. You got to have your head in the right place when you go to battle in any athletic sport. So, yeah.
Hey, well, I think we'll split up there, but we need tonight.
Well, we
absolutely need tonight.
We got to show that we are not, the moment's not too big. The stage isn't too big. You want to get through this game and play competitively is what you want to do. What you don't want is the crowd to go wild and for New York to win 8-1. I mean, that's what you don't want, to give them absolute supremacy, confidence, and all that. If you lose, you want to take them to the shed and back before you lose. So we'll see what happens. But 7:38 start. And I'm going to be watching, and you're going to be watching, Christopher. And I hope more people in the audience will be watching too. And I saw some people saying, well, baseball just isn't my thing. Well, you know something? Your community is, God damn it. And you have to start supporting things that are succeeding. And you're being as myopic as Kevin Stefanski. If you're waiting for the Cleveland Browns to do this or waiting for them to do that, you got to get off your ass and you got to support something that's working harder to get better, because you're just lollygagging in sorrow. There's no reason for it. So, let's cheer our team on and show that we have unity in Northeast Ohio. Christopher, thanks a lot for joining me. I appreciate it. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back again on Friday. We'll be talking, the return of Nick Chubb and the Cincinnati Bengals coming to Cleveland. And we'll be talking more about the Guardians, of course, to see how they're coming along in this impossible dream season. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.
All right. Love you, Move. Later.
Bye-bye.